I'll write it and we'll do it live.
Brought to you by PayUp. Booze, balls, and bad decisions.
With the first pick in the 2023 NFL Draft.
Booze, balls, bad decisions.
Don't forget to stop it.
I stopped it.
I
remember it only took however
boy.
shows we're on right now.
It only took 2 months of shows to make that happen.
Yeah,
Love it.
not a
Yeah,
bad
plus
thing.
the entire year before that on the Fuel Pod. But no big deal. Who's counting? So, welcome to Booze, Balls, and Bad Decisions, brought to you by a little startup company called PayUp. AJ,
Yes.
tell us what PayUp is.
So PayUp, as soon as we clear a few legal hurdles, PayUp will be the world's first peer-to-peer betting app. So we all have deadbeat friends, but we love our deadbeat friends, right? And sometimes we do dumb things with our deadbeat friends, right? So we make bets with them after we know they won't pay up, right? Well, PayUp solves the problem of your deadbeat friends. So you have a friendly wager, right, that you normally would not get paid on. Well, thanks to PayUp, you both put your bet in your app, put the terms in there, and PayUp ensures that the winner gets their money. No more deadbeat friends. PayUp for all your peer-to-peer betting needs.
All right,
Cannot wait. That's going to be great.
Benjamin. This week, we had hyped it up as it was going to be the week that we started breaking down the divisions in the NFL. And we were going to do the AFC North and South this week. And then you get a phone call, or you get a text message, and tell us about this text message.
Yeah, so I mean, it really kind of changed your trajectory this week. But it's one of the things that I love about doing this. Just like when we picked up on the OK Kids fiasco a couple of weeks ago. I mean, we can do whatever we want. It's our show, So we've been trying to get Joe Exotic on for a bit. We're from Oklahoma. We live in Oklahoma. I personally remember when Joe ran for president in 2016, when he ran for governor in 2018. I mean, prior to Tiger King coming out in 2020, everybody in Oklahoma knew who the heck Joe Exotic was.
Absolutely.
So we reached out and, try to get Joe Exotic on. Turns out he's in solitary confinement. So he's been solitary for a few days. But he reached out through some of his contacts and said, hey, I've launched a 2024 presidential campaign. And, Michael Robison is my campaign press secretary. And, he'd be happy to come on and talk with you guys. So we reached out. Joe's people put us in a group message and we all got hooked up. And, Friday, Saturday, it just kind of took off, and here we are. So we're gonna.
This is way better than listening to us.
Yeah, 100%.
Way better than us listening to us talk about football. Way better.
So I'm going to go ahead and bring Michael in. I don't know if Michael can hear us or not, but Michael, I'm going to go ahead and bring you in. There you
What's
are.
up,
Welcome,
guys?
Michael.
Love it.
Hey,
Michael, what's up, man?
Listen, it's good to be here, but I tell you what, it is an interesting thing because I definitely got to hear some perspective just listening to you guys give that intro. When you talk about Joe running for governor, Joe running for president in 2016, right? Like, I mean, those of us, I've known Joe for a while at a distance because I'm in the exotics world, right? But that
you guys all know each other, don't you? I mean, if you're harboring exotic animals, you know everybody.
Here's the deal. The way I describe it, so this is the exotic world probably hates me about as much as they hate Joe, which is why Joe and I are good friends.
Maybe this is not good for you, bud.
Here's the thing. But here's what I tell everybody. I'll just call it like it is. Like, we don't need to pad it. Like, those of us who do life with exotics are a little odd. Let's be real. Like, I'll call it like it is. We are strange. You got to choose, you kind of mess your life up to like, hey, I don't get to take vacations and do normal things like other people. But yeah, we all know each other, but I've always described it as a strangely incestuous space. So it is you don't like each other necessarily, but you can't avoid each other. So you kind of have to do some business together. You kind of have to lean into each other. So you cross paths no matter which side of any of the conversations you're on. But I will say this, those of us that weren't in Oklahoma or weren't directly, tied to Joe, like, the conversation of Joe running for governor or president, that conversation for us didn't occur till Tiger King came out. So, you're looking at, it's not that we didn't know, we knew, right? But perspective is different because you just kind of go, yeah, whatever. I mean, I got crazy friends who run for office too. So, you look back and you're like, okay, this is an interesting thing, but it is interesting for you guys to be in Oklahoma. What is that perspective? Because I mean, Joe's a character, right? He's a showman. He's been for, good Lord, almost 2 decades solid, a figure in that part of the world, that part of the country. Doing this exotics thing, being kind of this side, I hate using the term, but it's like a sideshow, right? And people are attracted to that stuff. We love to watch that stuff. So
everybody likes a train wreck.
Yeah.
So speaking like pre-Tiger King, right? So obviously we're all Okies, and yes, we're peripherally aware of them, but as nothing more than probably a meme, right? It's like it's a goof. It's not serious. But then this magical thing called Tiger King comes out, and it happens at the right time during COVID. So the 3 of us and 5 of our other goofball friends were really, really tight, right? So all this is going on. We're all on lockdown, and so we all had this group shared bonding experience over Tiger King, right? Right at the beginning of lockdown, we all take it down together, right? So it's something that has been just kind of background noise, kind of sideshow, like you said, that it just brings it front and center, right? Like, oh, this is a real guy that really went through something, and so it just changes the perspective altogether.
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, and we'll probably dig into this. There's a lot. Entertainment is created for that purpose. Entertainment, right? So. I said the other night I was on with Kaylee McEnany on Fox News Tonight, and we were talking about Joe.
Saw that interview,
so many people fell in love with the character of Joe, right? And I'll say this: Joe is what you see is what you get. No question about it. There's no on-camera, off-camera personality.
Okay, that was a question I was going to ask. If there's a different.
It's through and through. No, Joe's just Joe. And that's what makes it, and I think that's the thing. Like the guys at Tiger King, the producers, the folks who dug into that story to create it. However, like anything else, and I've worked with, really high-end politicians and celebrities most of my life. I grew up around it. I've been around that world. A lot of times what is put out, though, on the entertainment side of it doesn't obviously tell the whole story. You don't get to see somebody's heart. You don't get to hear, the true story necessarily of what's going on. You don't get to understand, to me, one of the greatest examples out there is somebody like a Michael Jackson. There's all this, folklore and things about who he was or a character. And then you have all this defamation and strange stories that come out later on. But the question is, how many people really knew the real person behind the persona, behind the legend, behind the thing that became, granted, you don't get bigger than Michael Jackson, but a pop culture icon, which Joe truly became during COVID. No doubt about it. I mean, he was the face of COVID. And there's no other way in the world anybody would have been interested, honestly, in watching a bunch of crazy animal people run around and backstab each other and tear each other down and, animals at the center of it. That would have never, ever worked at another time in history than
you're exactly right.
2020 and 2021.
So in 2018, when Joe was running for governor, he actually came to Ada. So he came to Ada and did he was in a parade and had some tigers. And I mean, one of my son's friends, Joe walks up to him and hands him a condom and he's like, vote for Joe Exotic. He's like, I'm 7, I can't vote. I'm 7. But no, it was, and what was strange then is Joe on Twitter at the time was saying, oh, I'm shooting this Netflix movie. They're doing this documentary on me. It's going to blow up the zoo. It's going to make us, so big and, get the animal. And then, the producers and the creators, they completely turn on Joe.
Right.
And he ends up in prison. It's unreal. It's
the wildest thing because really the original crew that was there to do that got railroaded out of it too. And so you had an original group of people who were filming with Joe years before that. And actually, a lot of their footage ended up in that. JT Barnett, who's a amazing TV producer. JT was shooting with Joe years before any of the Tiger King stuff. But Netflix came in just because of the way Joe and JT worked together. Were able to hijack a lot of the footage, a lot of the things. So like the footage you see when Saf gets, gets her arm ripped off.
Arm
and,
ripped
you
off.
have all of that. That was JT. That wasn't Netflix. That was not actually the people from Netflix creating that content. So you've got again, so much of the story that gets forgotten or gets pushed aside for entertainment value, right? Because everything gets edited down. I remember the first time that it kind of clicks for me. I was on vacation in the Dominican Republic, and my ex and I were approached by a film crew. We got pulled in to shoot, be this couple, and they gave us a random kid who belonged to one of the, mind you, we're on vacation to get away from our kids. Okay. So we get handed a random kid, go for the entire day. We got paid really well. We got to go do all kinds of cool stuff, like horseback riding on a completely private beach. And just some crazy stuff. It was awesome. But we get handed this kid to basically pretend it's our kid. We're two very white individuals with a very dark-skinned, obviously not our child, to go shoot this tourism video. But at the same time, one of the beaches we were on while we're shooting, HGTV's there shooting House Hunters International, right? And HGTV shooting, their show that they, I used to sit around at night and watch House Hunters. You're always curious, what can I get for what money and what city or what country or whatever, right? So you're always interested in, and all of a sudden I'm talking to this couple because we're all sitting around waiting on our film crews to do their thing. And this couple's like, we don't even know each other. We met at breakfast this morning. HGTV approached us and paid us to become this couple that they're going to broadcast on television. You go, oh, damn,
I'm gonna have to get prettier or something. That never happens to me ever.
I think we were at the end of our vacation. We were exhausted and ready to go home. Our flight was delayed a day, and we looked like they're an easy target. We'll pick them.
Yeah. They're done.
I don't think it was about being pretty people. I think it was totally we looked like easy targets.
So how did you and Joe Exotic get kind of hooked up together? How did you score this press secretary job?
Joe and I have a ton of mutual friends. We've crossed paths off and on. Joe and I never did anything official together ever until this year. But really, I think a lot of it is, I've worked specifically in the last 3 years, very deeply in the political space as a journalist, as a content creator for some very, very high profile YouTubers and publications across the country. So I really leaned into Joe's case because I really paid a whole lot of attention to, corruption that's happened in our DOJ, watching our nation basically come apart these last few years. And really my adult life. Honestly, since I've been an adult, I can't look at anything in our country and go, wow, we've really made a lot of progress. I look at them like, wow, all that history that I learned as a somebody in their middle 40s, you look back and you're like, first of all, nobody's teaching that history anymore. Second of all, my kids are missing a lot of context here, and you start to grow through it and you pay attention. But Joe's story stood out to me because we crossed paths, because we had common interest, working with the animals, and just really reached in and said, look, probably just like you guys, I think Joe's got some other component of his story that needs to be told. And so, personally, I built a large audience with close to 10 million followers across social media. And so, I really leaned in and said, Joe, I think I can help maybe create some attention because I think people need to hear what's going on. On a personal side.
Joe's in solitary, right? So tell us about that.
So
we saw, everybody saw the picture he posted on Twitter, right? He's leaning up against the wall. That's a straight gangster picture too.
Oh,
and, that is the pinnacle of prison right there.
I think this is,
and then he goes to solitary.
People miss about Joe, because he's a redneck, right? He's pure D American redneck. Other than, people don't know what to do with him because he's gay. So then they're like, okay, redneck gay. It's a weird character, right?
Well, so here's the deal with Joe though. He's old school gay. He's 80s, 90s gay. He's not this new gay.
He's not today's LGBTQ.
No, hold on. I need sorry,
whatever.
Benny.
Benny,
This is the best
Benny.
day
I
ever.
need clarification. Can I buy a clarification for $500?
Yeah.
What is 80s and 90s gay, Benny? Please
Those are old
me.
School, good-hearted. Just let us love. Let us do what we want to do. We're not trying to attack your children. We're not coming at you in parades.
Nope.
We're old school gay. We're just happy and living our lives.
You don't need to give us anything special. Just let us get married.
That's right.
Alone.
We don't need a Pride Month. They don't need any of that. It's just we're just gaying, bro. I mean,
Well, listen. So,
In case y'all
on
are
a
wondering,
personal note,
we are
I
going
mean,
to get
that's- I
ratio
have a
right off of
Oh.
YouTube.
Yeah, that's the way to put it. Because that's what. Listen, I have a husband. So my husband and I mean, that's the constant thing. We're always like, is Pride over yet? Can we please get through the month of June? This is like hell on earth. Like, we don't need a month. Exactly what you said, Benny. It's like, I don't need a month. I don't need anybody to listen. I need to be left alone. I'm trying to lead a normal life. Like, I chose the spouse I chose, but like, that's it. I don't care if anybody knows it. It's like, and then I think that's what's an interesting thing. And Joe's a really good example because his genuine mindset and heart is nobody's asking those questions. Why are we leaning into that? Nobody gives a damn. Like, we don't need to go there. My husband is not white. Like, I don't think about that. Half my kids aren't white. Like, I don't think about that. But I grew up in the South. I grew up in a good chunk of my life, I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama, bro. Like, there was definitely two different sides of town. There was definitely segregation as a reality in the 80s and 90s. Still, like the kind of stuff we talk about in the 50s and 60s, the civil rights movement. But in all reality, by late 90s, early 2000s, man, like, things weren't an issue anymore. Whether it was gay or straight, black, white, didn't matter. Like, all of a sudden, we've gone back to polarizing issues. And the thing that I love about Joe is he doesn't care. It's not about the polarizing issues. Like, what he cares about is how people at different levels of society, and this is a lot about his incarceration, his story, like, because again, people have a misconception in their mind because of Tiger King. Somehow Joe's probably got money coming out of his eyeballs. Like, Joe made maybe, and I mean maybe, in total, all of Tiger King, because people forget he was incarcerated by the time it came out.
Yeah, by the time it came out, he's already in jail. Yeah.
So
I
he
didn't
couldn't
know
make
that.
the money anyway.
Right.
But even at the time of filming, like, Joe didn't make but a handful of thousands of dollars. Like, it's not like he became some millionaire. And I can tell you, working the exotic space, Joe was living penny to penny to keep that place open every day, every week, because it is not. Listen, I tell people all the time, I got monkeys that live in my house. Okay. Like, I live and work with exotics every day. My human children are a whole lot cheaper to take care of.
What can I buy a monkey for?
than the animals,
Joe
right?
said on Tiger King, you can buy a tiger cub for around $2,000. So what can I buy a monkey for?
20 grand.
Damn, that seems high.
They'll cost you that every year to take care of. My kids cost me probably $10,000 a piece every year to take care. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just so. I think there's a lot of misconception, and the thing for Joe, like, and this will lead to you asking a question about solitary. Is Joe's done a really good job of kind of pointing out the really big dissection in our American culture and society, which is it's not actually the real systemic problem in America. It's not racism. It's not sexism. It's not all of these kind of things. They get pointed out. They're decoys. They're distractions for our real issue, which is classism, right? So you've got an elite, and it's not, I don't even call it the wealthy and the not wealthy, because I don't think that's right either. Because I know a lot of wealthy people are incredible human beings, right? Like, and they're generous, and they don't care. It's a matter of, are you in the club or out of the club? Are you in the circle or out of the circle? And so those who are beneficial to a agenda or beneficial to an idea get preferential treatment. Those who are not, get the short end of the stick. Joe's not beneficial to anything.
Yeah, because he's a redneck zoo owner from Oklahoma. He's nobody.
He's a wild card. But isn't America a wild card? Like, really? Like, in the whole thing, like, didn't it all start with wild cards? Like, a bunch of guys in Europe going, yeah, let's get out. Like, this is crazy. I'm not going to fall in the system anymore. And so, Joe's done a lot of, and again, yes, there are some financial realities that bifurcate America from the rich and the poor. And it does affect a lot of people in the justice system. And Joe has spent a lot of time over these last couple of years, but this year more than ever, as he launched his campaign, as he's really dug in. And obviously we've seen it. Look, we can look at what's happened in the current administration, and we can look at what happened with the last administration. We got a former president who's indicted. Guilty or not, I don't know. That's not up to me. I'm not the judge. I don't have to make those calls. But I do know this, the very thing he's in trouble for right now, we know our current administration is guilty of that and more, and didn't have any type of presidential protection to justify their way out of it, right? So we're seeing a dual reality to our justice system. We're seeing it with the current president's son escaping tax issues and all kinds of, crazy crimes and things like this. So basically Joe's really been calling that out, because what's happened is he's in prison on corruption and collusion. He's in that position because he was a pawn, and he's got the proof. The proof's out there. People can go to joeexotic2024.com/evidence, and they can watch. I mean, we literally have collected the affidavits, the video testimony from the people who helped testify to put him in prison, coming back and saying they were paid off. They gave false testimony. Like, he shouldn't be there. There's no reason for a judge not to hear his appeal right now, except for a statute of limitations. Because if they can push it another 18 to 24 months, they get outside of statute of limitations. So federal agents who are guilty of the crimes that put Joe in prison to begin with are outside of being prosecuted, so the Department of Justice doesn't get mud on its face in this whole thing.
So what was interesting to me about his trial, right? So they come after him with a murder for hire, right? And then they, I mean, it's pretty simple and pretty, explanatory for anybody with a brain to say, if I'm going to hire somebody, Joe said, I'm not hiring a $3,000 crackhead to go kill somebody.
Exactly.
I mean, you go out and, kind of, if you're going to go down that road, I think Joe's smart enough to choose
Joe's
better
a
road.
lot smarter. Joe reminds me of Larry the Cable Guy is always the guy I always point to. Great comedian.
Yeah, he's playing a part.
But Larry the Cable Guy is carrying around a doctorate. Okay, the dude is brilliant. He's super smart, but he plays dumb as a character, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have played in their mind the character of Joe Exotic and not the person of Joe Exotic. Joe's extremely smart. He's extremely brilliant. He did not build and create the things that he did in his life without being that way. He's super resourceful. And so you're exactly right. You're not going to go down the route of hiring a $3,000 crackhead to go out there.
But one of the things that I thought was interesting, Rinky, Rinky ran that zoo for 15 years. They don't allow him to testify. They won't let him come in and provide any of the documentation that he has, regarding Jeff Lowe, regarding, Alan Glover, regarding James Garretson. He's not able to produce any of that. They don't even bring the guy that ran the zoo for 15 years to come and testify.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just, and they knew the murder for hire wasn't going to stick. So then they hit him with the euthanizing those 4 tigers. And I mean, it's just.
See, this is the other thing people don't understand specifically with endangered species. So again, those of us who I have exotic animals, nothing's endangered that lives here, but I have exotic animals. I am licensed by the U.S. government because I want to protect my rights. I don't want somebody walking in here and taking my animals. I don't, they're like family to me. Plus, I have a fortune invested in taking care of these animals, right? I mean, they're an asset and part of our family, right? But I have people make accusations all the time. Somebody put up the other day, I get haters online. Oh, my animals have broken arms and legs. They're not getting care. Next thing you know, 2 days later, USDA is knocking on the front door. They come in, they do their inspection. I'm subject to federal agents walking in my house any day, anytime, invading my space. This is what people forget around that whole space. But those tigers in particular, when they're endangered, you can't just euthanize an animal when he gets sick. You have to get all kinds of permissions to move through that process. Joe couldn't get those permissions. Out of compassion, he made some moves to take care of some animals. But the ones that he did get help with, it's the very organizations who helped lead a coup against him. PETA is out there, they helped him move some other animals out. Yeah. But they were also party to calling him evil for being a humane human being. And I think that's what is so wild to me. And here's the other part. Obviously, the antagonist in the Tiger King story, the woman does the same stuff. And people forget she's for 30 years gone to the same auctions, bought the same animals from the same places that she's out there calling evil and wrong and bad, but she didn't build her empire without doing the same thing. And people forget all of these little pieces, but where the money fell is how the chips fell. Yeah. And so when you've got somebody with inexhaustible resources fighting somebody who's just trying to keep their head above water at all times, you don't have a chance in hell to get ahead of it. And so, and once the federal government sees a ploy in this thing, right, to pass particular laws, the Big Cat Safety Act being one of them, they've got funding that is behind the lobbying that goes behind that. It makes it very enticing and very easy. And when you've got mass media, and we all know this, the government works really hand in hand with a lot of mass media. That's why they get freaked out by independent journalism and anybody who is willing to do what you guys do, tell a story. They get worried about it because you're not controlled by the money. You're not controlled by the lobbyists. You're not controlled by the lawmakers. You are exercising First Amendment rights, freedom of speech. You're able to do things that they want to end our rights to. And that's the biggest reason Joe continues to show up and run for office. That's the stuff he's fighting for. It's not because he cares about being president. It's not because he cares about being governor of Oklahoma. It's because he continues to see the system fall apart, and the average American's the one getting pushed out.
So let me ask you this, because I genuinely don't know.
Yeah.
Can you govern this country from prison? Is that
You
possible?
technically can, but you will just pardon yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
right. I mean,
the
if he was
day-
elected,
the
you
day
just pardon
you're
him,
technically
right?
sworn. So I think, now don't quote me on this. This is where I know enough to be dangerous, not enough to be completely 100% effective. I'm pretty positive he would actually have to get sworn into office from prison, pardon himself, and leave prison.
Wouldn't
But
that be
you
fantastic?
can, constitutionally, you can be elected the president of the United States from a jail cell.
Okay.
So,
Interesting.
Joe's one, and I mean, there's a couple of candidates out there, but like, Joe's one of those people that, I mean, let's call it like it is. Joe doesn't care. Like, Joe's going to do what Joe feels passionate about. He's going to go do it. And I think we need a candidate anyway, sometime in the next couple of years, who's going to go in there and schedule F and clean house. Like, we need to wipe the slate clean. I've said this 1,000 times, and it's not like it's some political threat, but I joke about it. But of course, they control this too. But like, somebody asked me Jack Posobiec, who's, real big in the political commentary world and YouTube. Jack goes, "What do you think the solution for America is?" And I was like, 2 words: designated survivor. Like, it's time for a clean slate. Because, man, I've been on this planet 4+ decades, and you look back and you're like, I don't know that I can point to many presidents, if any, in my lifetime that I look and go, they did something great for the nation. Like, they genuinely did something great for the nation. And I think we've lost that. I think America has lost a place where men and women, but men, and this is, I hope this doesn't come across like completely like chauvinistic or
you can say whatever you
all
want
that
on
kind
here.
of stuff. But like, the reality is we didn't build this nation on the, women's right to vote and all that kind of stuff. We built it on a bunch of ballsy men who showed up and said, screw England, screw the crown. We're going to go do our thing. We're not going to have taxation without representation. We're not going to be governed irreverently. We're going to have our freedoms of religion. We're going to have our freedoms of life. We're going to have our freedoms of business. We're going to fight for it. We'll die for it. And we've lost that. And there's nothing in my life. There's not like there's a war in my 43+ years on this planet that makes any sense whatsoever towards the freedoms of America. It's all political ball games, and it's the war machine and all those things. And I look at it, and that's why I love Joe and I have a lot of respect for Joe. And I'm willing to put myself out there for Joe's sake to speak for him, to go, this is what people miss with Joe. He's ballsy enough to step up and go, I don't have anything else to lose. I'm willing to fight to give America back to Americans. Yeah. And I think that that's the kind of leadership we need. We need somebody who goes in and goes, I'm not afraid of the establishment, because there are candidates out there. And I just call it out like it is, because I'm like, Joe, I don't have a lot of filter, but like an RFK, like I hear a lot of things he says as he's running. I think, man, that's really great. I like what you say. Now there's things I don't like. He's, green energy and no fossil fuels and all that junk out there that just is a load of crock. But like, I hear that, I disagree. But the problem is, let's be real. His uncle and his dad were both assassinated for going against the system. Yeah. The man's not genuinely going to run for office without having some agreement with somebody in the deep state that guarantees him he's not going to get shot before the primaries, much less afterwards. So why would you put yourself on the line? Like,
well, it's interesting too how the Democratic Party has already kind of turned on him. I mean, his dad and his uncle, when you say Democratic Party, the first thing people think of are old FDR Democrats that got us out of the Depression, and JFK, period. I mean, those are the two. When you say the word Democrat, those are the two.
Right.
So, it's the Democratic, National Convention coming out and saying they're not going to allow him to debate Biden. Just completely stripping the guy down from any sort of platform. YouTube removing his videos, Instagram removing videos. I saw today.
Yeah, but like, let's be real here too about no debates. Like, listen, my grandfather has dementia. It's slow progressive dementia, but I've watched him for 15 years go downhill. I have a lot of compassion for it. It's heartbreaking. It's hard. But I'm telling you, we have a dementia patient leading our country. And I don't care what somebody tells me. I can see it from 100 miles away. I've walked it. I've lived it. Like, you can't put that man on a debate stage. You can't think straight. You know, I mean, I was just going through qualifying again, that whole deal. I sold deep state secrets and all that stuff that went viral. Like, are we sure that's not a deep fake? Because like so many things are deep fake. Like, please, like somebody tell me that's a deep fake, that we don't have a man in office that says stupid things like that and they're actually legit, you know. But like we've gotten to a place where nobody's got the balls to stand up and go, I'm willing to sacrifice everything I've got for the sake of the freedoms this country is built on. And people forget, see, because every time we get into constitutional right of this and constitutional right of that, I'm like, none of y'all actually understand what the constitutional rights were established as. They weren't rights given to us. They were rights we were given, period, just for being
born.
And they are protected rights because of that, not rights that we were granted, rights that we inherently have. And I think that often gets wiped out. Nobody's teaching that history. It's hard for me as a parent watching my kids grow up and miss that part of their education, having to come home and go, hey, by the way, let's go sit and actually look at the Constitution that governs our country and why when somebody goes, America's the greatest country in the world, which if I'm being really raw and honest, that statement is not true anymore as a functional statement. It doesn't mean it's not true at its core. Now, I don't.
Okay, I'll agree with that. I was going to jump in there for a second, but like, bro, come on now.
I don't believe it as a functional statement because I think what's happened is we've become. I'm going to filter some language here, but we've become
say whatever you want to say.
No filter.
Well, cuckold in the international space. Like, it's just sad. Like, we've become a giant cuck in the whole international scheme. And here's the thing. I spent 22 years of my professional life traveling around the world, working with other governments, countries, places, and people. And I've been there. I've heard the conversations from the other side. You know, I've lived in the place. I've also lived in the developing nations that we have extorted for money and influence and power that our governments have used as pawns to wash money and all sorts of things. I've seen things that most Americans never get to see. And
so you touched on this a little bit, but I got to ask this question.
Yeah.
So we obviously didn't know you outside of this weekend. I mean, I did a little bit of research, watched the Kayleigh McEnany, video, and saw some things on Twitter. But you seem like you've been in this political game for a very long time, and it seems like you've been around and you've worked, like you said, with both sides and different things. Why did you hitch your wagon to Joe Exotic? I mean, what? It seems like you're way overqualified to be working for a president.
I mean, I would vote for you. We need just you to run.
Yeah, well, Chad, you voted for Biden. Chad, shut up. You voted for Biden. Stop it.
No. I was given no alternative.
Let me say this, like in a moment of transparency, because I have been in that space. Like, let me actually back it up. I grew up in the uber top end of the religious world. Okay. My dad's a pastor. My grandfather's a pastor. Like, my grandfather was the head of publishing for the Southern Baptist Convention. You don't get any more deep evangelical American
that's where they live.
Culture than that. Like, we did Thanksgiving dinners at Billy Graham's house. Like, in the end, okay. So I had fingers into things that most people don't. But as a kid, I'm looking at it going, I'm just an observer, right? I'm taking this stuff in now. In all those years that I worked, I was both an entrepreneur, but I also pastored one of the largest churches in North America. So it put me in some places of influence without being political, technically, right? So I wasn't a politician in politics. I was a politician in culture and religion, right? So it really put me in an interesting spot. And so when I started working internationally specifically, doors were open to me that wouldn't be open to the average person.
That's because of the evangelical, big time trip. Because you're going on mission trips, right? We're going to send you over here to this mission trip. Go on a mission trip.
And actually, what happened to me, particularly in some of these mission trips, you realize these are stupid. Like, that's a whole nother thing we could unpack one day. But
we'll get on that again.
White people
we're going to get there here, and when we get through talking about Joe, we're going to go there here in a little bit.
Well, white people going and taking pictures of poor other colored people so they get Facebook clout. But that's
absolutely.
And some of those children live in my house, so that really does change your perspective. But
absolutely.
it's an interesting thing, but like in some of these countries, and Haiti being a primary one, I have a dual citizenship. I have something that most Americans will never have. I have stuff that takes presidential dispensation and things to have in a country like that, but it put me in great friendships with former presidents, prime ministers, senators out of a foreign country that allowed me to see a conversation and a perspective of American politics that nobody else really gets to see unless you're playing the game. Except I wasn't in the game. I was there as a friend and a support, bringing resources to a country to help a next generation. So it allowed me to, in a lot of ways, be in a very neutral space to conversations. I remember a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, one of the former prime ministers of Haiti was here in Nashville visiting, called me, said, let's go to dinner. So I go to dinner. I'm thinking it's just him. Like, we have a really great relationship, a good friendship. He's got a new significant other with him. I think they're married now, but significant other. I'm thinking it's just a few of us going to dinner. I get there. The governor's there. A couple of senators are there. While we're at dinner, he's on the phone with the Clintons. Like, it's this weird thing. And I find myself in these rooms and I scratch my head and I go, how the hell did I end up here? Like, why? Like, but it was the trust and relationship I built with certain people that allowed me some places to sit there. And I've leveraged that over the years. It allowed me to be in a place where, again, I worked as a journalist in politics. I was a writer for Tim Pool over at Timcast. I worked for Gateway Pundit. Worked for a lot of right-leaning publications or
Sure.
more centrist publications, because that's really who I am. It's not, to me, I think the idea of left and right, Republican, Democrat, I think it's a terminology we use, but there's not a functionality to it anymore because all the lines are blurred. Even
our founding fathers said that the detriment to this constitutional republic will be a two-party system.
Sure.
That was said in the 1780s. So,
right.
And it hasn't changed a bit.
Right. We need opposition. We need opposing mindsets. There's no way to find equilibrium, right? Like, you need pressure from all sides. So, like, that's my thing. Like, even going back to what we were saying about 80s and 90s gay versus today's whatever you call it. I don't even know what to call it. Trans cult is what I call it. But the reality is that, like, you need pressure, but you don't need crazy. And you don't need people to succumb to one central idea. It's okay. Like, I don't need people to lean in and be okay with the ideology that I have a husband instead of a wife. Like, it's okay if you disagree with that. That's fine. I'm not offended by that. That's okay. That's your belief system. You're allowed to feel that way. I obviously grew up in a conservative evangelical Christian family. Like, obviously I have a lot of compassion, and I have genuine compassion for it, not wounds or bitterness or anger over those things. Like, I look at it and go, I get it. I understand why you would feel that way. Like, it's okay. I just happen to be in a place that I don't feel that way. It's okay. And I think that's one of the things too, that this is one thing about Joe that gets missed, is Joe's going to push back on the justice system. But what Joe's not going to do is push back on the parties. Like, his idea is we've got to recenter as America on the central components that make us American before we start arguing the finer points. Like, it's really important that we start to break down the corruption that's continued to tear this country apart.
And you mentioned it earlier, and it's 100% true. And until you get reform at the DOJ level, none of this matters, right?
Exactly.
So if you look back at when our country was founded, if you look at the law, if you've studied law, everyone is equal under the law, correct?
Right.
I mean, that's what we were supposed to be built on. But that has been skewed in 1,000 different ways over the last, 200 years of this country's existence.
Right.
So how do you get back to that? Because you can't have a third-party candidate. It's not going to happen. Ross Perot ran and got on the ticket. All they are going to do is suck votes from one side or the other, which is going to guarantee the other side wins. Yep. That's the only thing a third-party system does. So how do you reform this? How do you fix it?
Well, let me make two statements here, or let me make one statement in particular. Does Joe stand a chance of fully winning the presidency? No, not functionally, but we've seen things happen. Okay. I remember when Trump announced his bid the first time around.
16.
And I had just watched another country successfully elect a
Brexit,
a celebrity, not a politician. And I literally said the day he announced it, everybody around me is like, "Oh my God, I can't believe, like it's never going to happen." I was like, "He's going to win. We're tired of politics in America. We just want something different." The problem is that we didn't center on values. We didn't center on the core components that make America what it was. And so I think America's got to recenter some things.
So that's a great statement because Trump's whole deal was make America great again. He got that from Ronald Reagan.
Right.
Ronald Reagan in the early 80s, like it, love it or hate it, America was phenomenal from 80 to 88.
Oh, sure.
And so Trump, kind of tried to piggyback on that to get some of those older Republicans. But what you said is just it's absolutely correct, because there wasn't a core movement of taking America back to the core family values,
right,
or having a centrist mindset where we can hear opposing arguments and we can remain civil and we can allow that to be because like, love or hate Trump, the guy is a divider, and that's what he did. He came in and he divided things, and then whenever he divided them, now you are either extreme this way or you're extreme the other way.
Sure.
And so
100%.
That centrist make America what it used to be in the 60s, 70s, and suburban America and family-centered America, it doesn't exist anymore.
Right. We have polarized individuals. We've destroyed, and listen, I am a gay man married to a man, so there are a lot of people out there who are going to think, how does he say all this stuff? But we've destroyed the value of family. We've destroyed the value of a core component of America as a whole, which is to take care of your own. But when we talk about the justice system, so this is a really interesting thing when you think about destroying things. When we built a justice system around this idea of innocent until proven guilty, everybody's equal under the law. And when you go to trial by jury of your peers. Who are your peers anymore? Because most people lack relationship and they lack a community. And we've forgotten the idea of community in America. So therefore, you go to a trial, is it contorted and corrupt by the system itself? Of course. But then also, who determines what that peer group is, right? So, because I don't think for 1 minute, and I've looked at a lot of cases over the last couple of 100 years in the American justice system, there are plenty of cases where people clearly committed a murder or did something atrocious, what we would call horrible today, that were acquitted by their peers because of extenuating circumstances based on character or all sorts of things. Like, but my thing is that, again, it's based on personal realities and freedoms instead of generalized ideologies that have to then govern every complete component.
Because the human race is not free of bias. It never has been and never will be. So you can't. It's very difficult to find 12 people to sit on a jury and a judge and a prosecutor and a defendant that are 100% equal under the law, because they all have influence. They all have, like you said, personal relationships, community, and things like that. So, I mean, what you're saying is 100% correct, but so how do we fix that? That's my question.
Well, this is one thing that I think what makes Joe great is really the fact that you ask that question and go, it's going to take a few of us to figure it out. Like, I don't think anybody's got the answer. If you want the honest truth, and that's what nobody wants to hear. They want the answer, right? Because they want the answer because they go, I'm going to cast my vote at that answer. But the best answer goes, I don't know. But we have to be willing to embark on a journey to figure it out. Because, again, in today's world, if you're going to have a fair and unbiased jury trial, or anything for that matter, look, we're here. We're all in, we're in different places, different spaces. 30 years ago, this that's happening right now didn't happen.
Yeah, not possible.
So for me to come on and have a conversation with you guys, for somebody that may be in, I don't know where, Canada for that matter, to be watching this right now, or South America or anywhere, who may see this down the road, that didn't happen. That took months or years for news to disseminate. So people did not have this ready access to information. There's a good side, there's a bad side to it. I think that's the question we got to figure out. It's not regulation of free speech. It's a question of how do we vet out what type of information someone has ingested to decide whether a bias is inherent or not as they lead or as they make decisions. Because, again, just like any of us, you could take a stance. Like, the media spent how many years trying to tell us that, a former president colluded with Russia and he's a racist sack of shit, essentially, right?
Yeah.
But I know the man. He's not racist. He obviously didn't collude with Russia. We know that very clearly now.
Facts now.
In fact, if Kevin McCarthy and some Republicans would grow some balls, there might be an impeachment of Merrick Garland, and we could clear out some things in the Department of Justice. But I don't think any of them have balls enough.
They don't, because they're all a part of the same. That one has an R beside their name and the other has a D. They're in the same circles. They're in the same groups.
It's the RD party. It's just it's a research and development party. It's just so bad. Like
so you brought this up a couple times. I was really after Donald Trump Jr. Post January 6th, all those things, he comes out and says, I watched Tiger King. I've talked to Dad about it, whatever. I really believed that Trump would pardon Joe. So my question, let's just say Joe gets elected. Does he pardon Trump or does he let him hang?
So if you want, I'm going to answer the way Joe would want me to answer, which is an honest answer. He's not going to let him hang, but he's not going to take him out of there day one. I think his attitude is anybody on the elite side of leadership should have to experience what everybody else has to go through for a minute. He would definitely pardon him, no question. Yeah. But I don't think he's going to do it day one. I think he's going to let him get a little taste of what's out there, because he is a person, regardless of elected or not, he's got an opportunity to influence what happens in the future. And I think that's a hugely important. Listen, I think that's what made America an amazing country to begin with, is that in those first 50 to 100 years of building this nation, nobody was exempt from the conditions of building this nation. And so even if you were wealthy, you still had to suffer for a moment, because maybe you didn't have the resources and you had to build them from the ground up. Maybe you had to build the roads, or you had to build the railroads, or whatever it was. But like, you weren't exempt from the hard work that was required. Today, there's so much infrastructure that so many people are exempt from that. And I think one of the things that is missing in empathy and compassion in our culture in America that keeps it from being such a great country is that we are exempt from experiencing and having to be responsible to do the work. I think, there's other candidates out there, Vivek Ramaswamy. I think one of the things, I don't agree with everything Vivek says, but I really like the guy. I think he's really an interesting candidate. But one of the things that he talks about is, bringing back the need to either own property, serve in the military, things like that, responsibility before you have the right to vote. I do think that there is a lot of merit to the idea that we as Americans should have some responsibility in the function of this country before. And listen, I didn't serve in the military, so I'm saying this at the risk of understanding that I was exempt of those things too. I grew up in a time where those things were not a requirement. There was not a draft. I wasn't going to be pulled into war at 18, but the reality is that we have so little invested. So when I sit with, I was lucky enough when I was a kid, I had great grandparents still living. Like I joked all the time, people in my family didn't die. They just kept shrinking, because everybody does. And eventually they disappear. I had grandparents that lived well past 100, and so having conversations of what life was like in the investment, but to sit with a grandparent who served in the military, served in a war that was fundamental to American freedom in some form or another, or had their own parent or grandparent who served in something like the Civil War.
Yeah.
And to have those conversations and understand what it looked like when this country was genuinely divided and at war with itself.
So I agree with what you're saying.
Understand the merit of building and working hard to get there. And I think that's a big component. That's what makes it so easy for us to go fly rainbow flags, to fly somebody else's flag, for that matter, some yellow and blue piece of shit that hangs over the White House and we give billions of dollars to. All these things, because we have no investment as Americans for the general whole of what it takes to maintain and build and protect the rights and freedoms that made this country what it was.
So I think what you're saying is 100% true, because, I grew up, my grandfather was a World War II veteran, and, he would chew us out as kids for not even shaving.
Right.
If you're too lazy to shave, then
right.
I can't use you. You can't even get up in the morning and shave your face. I can't use you. So in your opinion, how do you think the COVID lockdowns just exemplified that to the nth degree?
I think you just gave people a free ticket to do nothing. I think you just literally. So I've said this again. I'm gonna go back and refer to Haiti. FDR put into play in Haiti during our occupation. We've occupied Haiti a number of times, taking control, all that. Social welfare, before it was an actual thing in the United States, got tested in that nation. So if you got a birth certificate and a what they call a NIF, a social security number, in that country at that time, you automatically got a check from the government, period. No questions asked. You didn't have to qualify for it. It was a right given to individuals to equalize income, to stabilize everything. Obviously,
Socialist economy, sure.
well, we got a taste of that in COVID, right? Everybody gets a stimulus check. Everybody gets an opportunity to file unemployment. Everybody gets a chance to file for this, that, and the other from the U.S. government, right? So we got a little taste of that. What is interesting to watch is in the nation of Haiti, and I say this a lot because I think it's a really interesting litmus test for us as Americans. This is the only country that was a slave nation that liberated itself. It's also the only black nation who fought and gained its own independence, right? So there's a lot of things that are historically relevant about the country. It was built on a lot of pride. And up until the 1930s, it was the wealthiest nation in the Caribbean. And something happened in the 1930s that made it now the poorest country in our hemisphere. And I can tell you exactly what it was. Social welfare, socialism, and equalizing the income and the achievements of everyone in that country and making it so that everybody had to be at the same level. And so I think one of the things we have to do in this country is return back to the idea of, we've been told capitalism is evil. Like, who came up with that bullshit? Like, I'm not offended by a billionaire. I'm sorry. I'm just not. Like, I'm impressed by him. Like, I look at him and go, I remember the days as a college kid, early 20s, working, building my first career. Like, my dream was to make my first million by the time I was 25. I missed it by a few years, but I got there. I did some things in my life that were really great, but I would pick up things like the Rob Report, right? Like magazines where you go and see somebody who bought their new Maserati, their Rolls Royce, their new $150,000 wristwatch. They're crazy things. They don't make sense in real world stuff, but like they are their goals. They drive you forward.
Well, it used to be called the American Dream, right? I mean, that is the American dream. I came from nothing.
That person's a horrible, selfish, nasty human being who doesn't care about anybody else. I went, oh, that's really impressive. This person's worked really hard. They've done something right to achieve the right and the freedom to be able to have those things. Like, we've lost that somewhere. We've made that evil, and that's not evil. Like, yes, there are some evil rich people out there. I mean, let's be real about that too. It's not like there's exceptions to everything. There's an outlier in every area of life. But the reality is that the vast majority, I've got friends who fall into the billionaire category. I've got a family member who does. Like, they're generous. They're incredible people. And I watched them literally sacrifice most of their life to get to where they are.
Yeah.
And people forget that. And I think those are the things we have to let people. Actually, the real answer to your whole question is it's time to just let some things fail. And we have forgotten the ability to let things fail. Like, we've somehow erased in history.
Well, and everybody says, America's, it's too big to fail, right? It's too big to fail. It can't fail, because if it fails,
that's the lie that destroys America at its core. You got to let these banks, we got to quit bailing out banks. We got to quit trying to fix the economy. A recession is not a bad thing. It's not a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I don't want a recession, but it's not a bad thing. It equalizes. Failure equalizes. Crashes equalize. The up and down of the dollar, the up and down of the economy, the housing market, all of the things. Like, it's okay. It's okay to fail, because we don't find our way through a solution without failure. If we band-aid it, this is why I think we live in a country full of, for lack of a better term, we live in a country full of pussies, because nobody's willing to lose. Everybody's got to get a damn blue ribbon. Everybody's got to be patted on the back. Like, I grew up in a time where it's like, well, shit, I got a C on that. Like, my teacher sucks. She must hate me. And I lived with that. Like, and my parents' attitude was, you better do better. You better work harder. Not like, what's wrong with the teacher?
Yeah, let's go get the teacher fired, because your baby boy is way better than that. Yeah,
it's time. It's actually time to let some things fail. If you want America to climb back out of the hole it's in right now, and if we want this country to rise back up to greatness, it's time for us to fail for a minute. It's okay to fail. Like, failures. So one of my mentors taught me a long time ago, failure is the space we move through, not a destination. And as you move through that space, your job is to be an observer, be a student, learn everything that you can. And as you move through that space, you'll become smarter and stronger for it. So when you look at things like the Great Depression in America, when we took the reins off of all of this stuff and we let the economy implode on itself, what happened? The economy in America really was very healthy for decades after.
Well, World War II helped with that. I mean,
It did.
let's be real there. I mean,
It did, but
Yeah.
my thing is like, yeah, the war machine became a reaction to a lot of
Absolutely.
things. Certainly don't discredit that. But the average American, look at the wealth that is created by boomers compared to Gen Xers, millennials, and so on, because they came out of post-Depression era families who realized I got to work hard, I got to build my own, because failure is imminent. Like failure wasn't a maybe, failure is a given, right? And today's culture and today's leadership says that failure is not acceptable, right? Like you talked about your grandfather, like, if you don't shave, you don't do this, like,
Yeah.
those are all things. But the reason behind that is if you don't shave, you're not going to get a good job. You don't get a good job, you're going to fail. And I'm not going to support you to choose failing. Like you're not going to choose failure, but failure is imminent. So therefore, those who make decisions to fail are going to fail. Let them fail. It's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. Like we've forgotten that in America.
That's good stuff, man. I mean, I think what you're saying is, most Americans, right? I mean, I would say 99% of Americans. What do they truly want? They want to be able to be able to provide for their family. They want their kids to go to safe schools. They want to be able to practice whatever religion they want to practice. They want to be able to raise their family and do their things like they want to do without interference from others. I mean, it's very simple at its core, but we've polluted it so much that, like you said, it's almost a bad thing now to be married and you got 2 kids and you live in a suburban neighborhood and you have 2 vehicles in your garage. That's almost an evil thing now.
Right.
Where 20 years ago, that was you've made it. I grew up in a small town, and those are the things that you kind of dream for as a kid is, I want my 2.5 kids and my 2-car garage and, a guest bedroom,
Right.
I mean, all these different things, it's just,
it's a wild reality. Like I
is.
live where I live. I live in Nashville, but I grew up south of Nashville in an area, the city of Franklin, Williamson County. Now it's like the 9th wealthiest county in America. When I was growing up, it was poor as dirt.
Vanderbilt, right? That's the reason. Vanderbilt,
Yeah.
right? Vanderbilt University,
Yeah, all that area. But it's an interesting thing because like the house that I currently live in, I'm only the second person to live in this house. This house is 80 years old. Okay. The couple who built it lived here until they couldn't take care of themselves anymore and moved out. Right. Then we moved in. Right. All my neighbors, though, they're all about that age. They all built these houses after they got married. They've lived here their whole lives. Like they weren't trying to achieve the mega mansion. They weren't trying, like they were happy to just be normal. And that's conversations I have with my neighbors all the time. My favorite thing is the fact that I'm probably one of the youngest people in this entire neighborhood. And I love every minute of it, right? Because I'm having those conversations. My neighbor 2 doors down is the head of the association here. He's 82 years old, man. He throws the best parties, by the way. Like,
of course.
They put up tents and run margarita machines all night long. And I'm like, you're the coolest 82-year-old like I've ever known in my life. But that's the thing is he's never worked a job where he's made more than, he's never probably in his lifetime, he's never made more than $75,000 a year. He's an average American who's above the poverty line, but like he's middle class. Yeah. Like we've erased that idea of the middle class and we've erased that idea of just being normal. Like keep achieving, keep making more. And if you don't, something's wrong. And, I mean, there's just all these struggles. Like I remember at 36 years old, I checked off everything on my bucket list. I had owned all the businesses. I had I checked off the money list that was important to me. I had met the people I wanted. And the climax of that was in February. It was really, I was 38, but February of 2018, I found myself sitting in Richard Branson's living room in Verbier, Switzerland, invited in to speak at this summit thing. And I'm sitting there going, this was the last thing on my list to sit with these people. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh shit. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, and I had to really recognize in myself, like I had to learn to find contentment in just life being normal. Like, it's a funny thing now is that people can look down a list of things that I've accomplished or done or who I know or any of that stuff. And they're like, why don't you have this? Why don't you have that? I'm like, why do I need any of that? Like, I'm happy to be at home with my kids, with my husband, with the animals that I have. Like, the apex to me is I have all these animals
Yeah.
around. They run my life, but I'm happy with it. I'm cool.
Well, I'm
with it.
telling you, that's 99% of America. That
It
is
is.
what they want. I want to
Yeah.
come home after
That's
work, working a job that I enjoy. I want to come home. I want to have dinner with my family. I want to see my kids.
Yep.
I want to hang out with my spouse. I want to, be able to go on a vacation once or twice a year. I just
Right.
that is what normal used to be in America, and that's what we've got to get back to.
Yeah, and what you have to do is let people fail. So businesses have to fail, economies have to fail, people's dreams and achievements do have to fail. Because again, we bought into the American dream so much so that you can't fail at achieving the American dream. And I think that's something that we've missed. Like looking back at the stories, and if you think to older people in your life, how many people are like, yeah, one time I did this business, it didn't work, so I moved on to the next thing, or I tried this and it didn't. Like, they don't look back at it like, oh my God, my whole life crumbled. Like, they look back and go, it didn't work. Like, the most valuable lesson I ever learned was the last time I owned retail stores for a long time. I had a retail partner literally rob me blind, embezzle every dime I had. And this was in 2014. I woke up one day and I went from having a couple $1 million in the bank to having zero. The most valuable education I ever had, and the most expensive education
I would say,
was a failure. And the failure was on me. It was my failure. It was my failure to lead the business. I was so good, I thought I didn't need to pay attention to things anymore. I thought I had achieved everything that you needed to, and you didn't have to do that anymore. And I learned a very hard and very valuable lesson. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. And in fact, I look back now at the person who even did it to me, and instead of being upset and frustrated and angry, I look back with gratitude, because I go, I'm a better, smarter person because of that. And I also found out how strong I am. Also found out how resilient I am. And I'm not afraid of a damn thing. So, when people have also asked me, coming in here and partnering up and helping with Joe, I'm not afraid of a damn thing. He's got a lot of crazy critics out there. He's got a lot of weird people who show up and try to tear him down. Screw them all. I don't care. You don't scare me. I've survived so much in life. I do not care. Like, let's go. It's time for some truth to be told. It's time for freedom to be brought back to America. It's time for people in this country to man up, grow some balls, stand up to themselves and their own fears, and become strong again. But you don't get there without taking a few hits.
And now, nowadays generation, and gosh, we fall into this. So it's not like I'm speaking as a Great Depression survivor or anything like that. But the first thing everybody wants to say is, oh, well, Michael had these retail stores and he had $2 million. Well, that's not fair, because I don't have retail stores and I can't make $2 million. And, oh, how lucky is Michael because he had all these retail stores? You know what? I think it was Will Rogers said, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yes.
So, and I think we've gone away from that. We've gone away from pulling up your bootstraps and man, I did fail and I lost everything I had, but am I going to lay here on my back, or I'm going to get up and make another way?
Right.
So
that's exactly it. And again, I grew up watching it happen. My father, I now run my dad's company every day. I swear to God.
Which was probably a dream of his. If you think, if your dad owned a company, what dad doesn't want to give it to their son?
It's a dream of his and nothing I ever wanted in life. Let's be real. None of us in our 40s are looking like, oh, thank God I'm going to take over my dad's thing. It's not real. Let's be
Chad,
real.
is that how real
Chatty,
is that,
Chatty, speak to us.
It's a very real thing for me, but yeah, I got you.
But the thing is you look back and you go, my dad worked hard. I remember the days when he started the company, sitting at the kitchen table with my mother, and that if they didn't get a sale, they didn't get this thing, we didn't have money to put gas in the gas tank. I remember that. So stepping into it, I have an appreciation for the fact that this came out of a lot of blood, sweat, and tears over the last 30 years of his life.
And a respect for it as well.
Right. So it may not necessarily be my dream, but it is in a lot of ways, because now I have pride in the legacy, because again, it goes back to that core. I don't have to be the creator. I don't have to be the hero of the story. And I do think that's another thing that gets told to all these kids growing up today. You're your own hero. You're going to be the hero. I get self-esteem, but some of us get stronger, not because we get built up every minute, but because we get our ass whooped every once in a while, and we get stronger for it. I don't know any story in history that ends well where everybody gets a blue ribbon. It just doesn't work that way. And so, I look at it and I go, hey, I didn't intend to own a merchandising, screen printing, t-shirt embroidery company, but that is what I will do. And you know what? I'm really proud of it now, because if I don't fail at this one, because I failed at others, maybe my kids can have it too. Maybe. Yeah. But that's up to them. At the same time, I've got animals. I got all this stuff. Somebody asked me the other day, they're like, because the politics thing, I love politics, man.
Me too. I love
absolutely it. Running for office doesn't scare me. None of that stuff. My kids are still young enough. I want them to be an active part of that decision, because I'm not putting their lives in the middle of that stuff, deep. But somebody goes, oh, now you're a press secretary. I was like, yeah, because being Joe's press secretary is the biggest resume builder everybody's looking for, right? Like, but here's the thing. I look at it and go, what Joe does bring to the table, period, no matter what, is that Joe is causing people to have conversations they wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah.
And he's doing it with, just like you said way back at the beginning, you go back to those moments when he was campaigning in Oklahoma. It's crazy as hell, but you hand out a condom with your face on it, people can't help but have a conversation. And Joe's mindset is, what do I have to do to make people talk? Because if we don't have a conversation, it's not going to change. Nothing's going to change.
I'm just going to ask a quick question. You said on here it's not realistic for Joe to win. What is your realistic expectation? Is this to create the conversation? Is it to build momentum towards the next cycle? What is it realistic?
So I want to take that question and I want to reframe it. I want to be real specific.
Yes.
I'm an outcomes focused guy. What does success look like, conservatively speaking? What does success look like for Joe's campaign?
Success for Joe. I mean, listen, success for Joe is a win, but if anything underneath the idea of a win for Joe is to cause Americans to have enough conversation to quit voting for the wrong person.
Okay. Which is fair.
I'm actually completely content if what I am doing and what Joe's team is doing right now to help Joe, because obviously Joe doesn't have a voice. I mean, for all we know, Joe could be sitting in solitary for the next 4 months. Like it's indeterminate. So
which we never did get to that. So why is he there? Just briefly.
They shut him up. That's it.
Okay.
Joe didn't have bad behavior. Joe doesn't listen. Joe's the most wonderful, laid back, chill. Like, yes, he'll say things unfiltered, but like, it's not like he's got into violence or some crazy situation. Like,
how does he get the mullet dyed in prison?
I don't know how a lot of people do certain things in prison, but have you noticed that prisoners somehow work it out? Like, my best friend was in a wrongful conviction in federal prison for 4 years. And every week we would get on the phone 2 or 3 times. And every time he told me a story, I'm like, how did y'all pull that off? Like, I worked, like, I coached guys in prison in the Kern Valley out in California. I coached guys in Kern Valley prison as business entrepreneurs and stuff. So when they got out, they could start their own business, because these guys, it's hard for them to get a job, right? But I remember, like, these guys would tell me stories too. But, I'll tell you something. You learn to be a better entrepreneur and a lot more resourceful when you're a lot more limited in your resources. So,
that's right. And at least with Joe, I mean, a country boy can't survive, right? I mean, Joe's going to figure it out.
Yeah, he's going to figure it out. But I honestly have no problem. Now, I can't say that Joe would phrase it this way. So let me be very clear. This is coming from me, even more so than Joe. But I don't think that it contradicts anything Joe would say by any stretch. But if I can keep more people from voting for a corrupt administration, and it at least gives us a better option for the next general election, then I will get as loud as I have to get to help America.
I mean, you've been in the political realm for a long time. I mean, we've talked about it over the last hour and 15 minutes. But so let's kind of look at 24 for you. Obviously, Trump's going to be in the mix. I don't think that the Democrats are going to allow Joe Biden to escape this. I think this is going to be his downfall. I think they're going to try to plug in Gavin Newsom, and he's going to be the savior and come in and kind of save the Democratic Party. But so let's say you got Gavin Newsom. Let's say you got Trump. Let's say you got. I think DeSantis is a really strong player, despite what the polls are saying. I think that DeSantis is going to probably end up being the Republican nominee. So give me your thoughts. Who do you think are the nominees on both sides, and then who comes out of this?
I mean, Here's the problem. I'm really torn on the Democratic side because I don't think the DNC has sights on anybody, and unless they spring a surprise on us, which we all know
It's going to be Gavin Newsom. It's going to be.
God help us all. I lived in California. God help us. Like, this may be the one time I genuinely, because everybody makes this threat. Like, I'm moving out of America. If, you know.
Yeah, how many
Gavin
were
Newsom
leaving? How
ends
many
up
were
the
leaving when Trump got
Listen,
elected?
if Gavin Newsom ends up the president of the United States, I have dual citizenship. I'll move to Haiti, for God's sake. Like, and I kid you not. Like, hold me to that shit. Like, hold me to it. But yeah, you're right. It could be Gavin. I'm still having a hard time because I think, honestly, the game. And again, a lot of inside conversations, a lot of things that I'm privy to. I honestly think they'll keep letting Biden go through the general election, and then we'll have like a 25th Amendment moment, because there's no way he makes it through a second term. There's no possible way. But God help us if.
So does he keep Harris on the ticket?
Ends up our president.
Does he keep Harris on the ticket, or does he go somewhere else?
No, I think he keeps Harris on the ticket. I don't think he has a choice.
Yeah.
I don't think, because he can't continue his grift of faking his liking of anybody who's not white. I mean, again, anybody who buys the bullshit gaslighting from Joe Biden. I mean, the man got pushed out of a presidential election for plagiarism and lying. Right? Yeah. He led efforts to segregate America. Okay, like, he passed laws that put more black men in jail. So did Kamala Harris. Passed more laws that put more black men in prison than any elected leaders in the history of the United States. And yet he's the friend of the minority. Like, come on, like, wake up, America. Like, this stuff's all out there for you to see. But again, well, we can go down that route. Who owns mass media? Who owns communication? And who's the lobbyist? Where's the money coming from? Follow the money. Just follow the money. I think that I still kind of hold to the fact that he'll be the nominee right now. That we still got 18 months.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
I mean, we got
he may not live 18
Long
months.
ways.
We don't know.
We got a long ways to go. It's early yet, so we'll see. But if it were today, he's the nominee. On the Republican side, short of a true criminal conviction, I still think Trump's going to get the nomination. If those were my two choices, if those were the only two choices I had, I'm obviously going to cast my vote to Trump. And my only reason is I think he's going in with a vendetta, not because I think he's make America great anymore. I think he's going into clean house to prove it down. Yeah. What does it matter? Burn it to the ground. I'm not getting another term. And quite frankly, we probably do need to burn it to the ground. Like, but I don't know. I think we're still early yet. Like, again, I like Vivek Ramaswamy from the Republican side. I think he's a great candidate. I think his ideas of abolishing all the alphabet agencies and do it in a merit-based voting system and things like that are really good. I like a lot of things that I hear RFK say. There's things I don't like. And again, there's no perfect candidate. That's the really hard thing. Like, if we're having a really unbiased, true conversation about what the future looks like in America, and you said it earlier, third-party candidate doesn't stand a chance, because the culture in America has never allowed a third-party candidate ever to make a dent. The only thing they do is detract votes. Yeah. So now I respect the third-party candidate who comes to the table and says, my objective is to at least keep this one person from getting a majority. Yeah. Like, I can respect that. I'm okay with that. And somebody who does that, I have respect for. But I do believe we're at a place in America where I think the next 4 years, because I really think the election cycle and what happens in the immediacy after that election cycle are going to determine whether America remains a nation built on a constitution that protects our inalienable rights, that are protected by a governing constitution, or we become a nation that falls under a socialistic regime. I really believe the next 4 years are the shift in our American culture.
I don't think that that's completely off base. Now, if you said that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you would be laughed out of the room. But due to recent events, I don't think you're probably too far off there.
Well, what's amazing to me in America today is that none of this stuff is hidden. None of this stuff is like subversive anymore. It's all out in the open. And you're a conspiracy theorist regardless which side you stand on. Like, and so you're discredited just for expressing your opinion. And so I think that's what's scary to me. That's why I say we're at the edge of the socialist government. because at this point, unless you adhere to and parrot the regime's verbiage, you are, as Merrick Garland said, anybody who questions the integrity of the Department of Justice is a threat to our democracy.
Yep.
And again, America, wake up. We have a democratic voting system, but we are a constitutional republic. We are governed by the people, for the people, through the inalienable rights of the people guaranteed under the Constitution, but we have a democratic voting process that guarantees our leadership. So we have forgotten the basis on which this nation was built and how it was meant to be governed from the beginning. And every time you say that, every time I've said it, you get fact checked with a bunch of bullshit that isn't true.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm at a quandary because really, I think at this point, the future of America is based on a fight, not an election. And I don't mean that in, maybe it is a literal fight. You know, there's a lot of people out there like, oh, we're on the edge of a civil war. I don't know, because wars aren't fought on the battlefield anymore. They're fought in ideology. But I do think that at some point there's gonna come a place where America needs to be honest about its factions and stand up. I think that regardless of which side you stand on religion, I do think that there's a big basis in America on religion, and not the way that we're told and all this divisive BS about evangelical white Americans hate minorities and segregate this and segregate that. It was a simple set of values that govern the inalienable rights of absolutely loving the person that stands next to you, having honor and respect for the people around you, protecting them and fighting for their safety and provision so that they could do exactly what you said, provide for your family, enjoy life, and live free.
Yep.
And so you can be Catholic, Jewish, I don't care, agnostic, I don't care. We all believe something. We all stand on some set of values. And at some point, we have to have a mutual respect that guarantees that for one another. And we're willing to fight for that, even what we don't agree with. So when you go back and you look at those World War II vets or anybody else in anything prior to that, when they fought for the freedom of this country, they did not all agree on things. But what they did agree on is we're going to protect this nation to allow you to have the freedom to disagree and live your life without being overgoverned, overtaxed, and oppressed by any one governing body.
And give their life for it. That's what it means.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Man, this is great stuff, Mike. Man, we've been going for an hour and a half. You know, I could sit here all night. I mean, I really could. I could sit here all night, but you know, we want to be respectful of your time, and you know, greatly appreciate you coming on with us. The screen printing. I mean, I'm gonna get with you offline. We've got some merch we're wanting to get made up, so I'll get with you on that, and
I'll give you deals.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but no, I mean, seriously, you know, Oklahoma, we laugh, we joke, we, you know, make Joe Exotic memes, but, you know, I think at its core, you know, anybody can look at his, you know, conviction and say, man, there's questions that should have been answered, and there's questions that factually should have been asked, and they weren't allowed to be. And so
people need to understand July 8th, we're going to hold a big all day broadcast. I've got huge celebrities, politicians, things like that are going to be a part of it. But this is the thing that I tell people. I want to see Joe out of there because I love Joe. He's a friend. You know, it matters to me, but it matters. And Joe says this a lot, and he means it. It's genuine. It is for all Americans. It is not just for Joe's freedom. It's not just because Joe doesn't want to be in there. Because if they can do it to Joe, they can do it to you. And that's what Joe says all the time. And we want to see Joe get out of there. We want to free Joe Exotic.
Free him.
I'm telling you, people need to go over there to joeexotic2024.com/evidence. They need
we're going to put that. We'll put that up down and scrolling at the bottom again. Yeah, we'll put that back up.
They need to get over there and take a look at that because the affidavits are there. The sworn video statements from people saying, I committed perjury. I lied. I was paid off by a federal agent. I was paid off by a filmmaker to testify false information that resulted in Joe being where he is today, and ask the Department of Justice to step over the fact that they're trying to keep mud off their face and move towards a place of freedom for Joe. It's super important. And this is the one thing. Joe he's a wild card. He's crazy. He's a lot of fun. You know, he makes life interesting. He'll make you scratch your head. He'll make you go, wait a second. Did he just say that out loud? Like, you know, that's Joe.
Yes.
Quite frankly, we could use a moment in America. I actually would love And Kaylee McEnany asked me this the other night because when I went on Fox News, I took one of the monkeys with me.
I saw that.
Literally
Yeah, I watched that interview. Yeah,
I thought she was joking. I was like, "You really want me to go on Fox News as a press secretary for candidate of the president of the United States and carry a monkey?" But I was like, "It is Joe, so it does make sense." So, but she asked the question. She's like, "So if you're press secretary, do you step to the podium with a monkey?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I do. You're dang straight I do." And you know what? I think America could use a moment to laugh, to have some freedom, and to know that somebody up there doesn't give a damn about what they got to lose, that they're just there to fight for the actual American that lives here and wants that basic right to live their life, love their family, enjoy their freedoms, build a business, save some money, and just live with a little bit of peace for a minute.
Absolutely.
Heck yeah, man.
That's great. It's good
Michael,
stuff.
I have a question for you before you leave. And before we out, is there any way we can get you back on to give us updates, how the campaign's going, just even if it's quarterly or however you want to do it, whatever fits in your schedule?
Absolutely.
I think that would be awesome.
Reach out. Yeah, just reach out anytime. I'd love to.
And fun. Then you said you have an event come up on July 8th. You want to plug that right now for whoever's going to watch this at any point?
Yeah, again, you can follow Joe_exotic on Twitter. I mean, Joe's everywhere. He's on all the social platforms. So you'll see it. We'll start to put that stuff out in the next week. There'll be links there. It'll be live on YouTube all day from Joe's YouTube as well. It'll be it's that Saturday following July 4th. So on July 8th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And again, we've got some amazing, because we haven't put everything out there yet.
Yeah, sure. No, don't ruin it now. Yeah.
Like, I'm actually sitting back a couple times like, holy crap, we're getting this person to come on. And it's across the board. It's all ages. It's all demographics. I mean, I've got everybody from the highest level in politics, in social media. I mean, heck, I got Playboy centerfolds that are coming on. Like, it's just this crazy mix of amazing people. But what it is representative America. And people are coming on saying, hey, we want to talk about this. We want to talk about really raising awareness for Joe. The idea that day, we are going to raise money that day. But the idea that day is for us to take our team to D.C., to hold a big event in D.C., to really point blank right in front of the White House, tell Biden and the entire Department of Justice it's time to hear this appeal. Let's quit waiting on a statute of limitations. Let's quit sticking our head in the sand. Let's be honest about this, and let's move forward for Joe and for America.
Yeah. Great stuff, man.
Thank you so much,
Michael. I mean, this has been great. I mean, I've enjoyed this a lot. You know, we're just some, just mid-30s guys that like to talk about sports. We like to talk about politics. It's just, bad decisions, all the stuff that, that kind of just makes our little world go around. So we'd love to have you back on. That's an open invite. So I've got your contact information. I'll reach out to you. And, it'd be fun to do, like, after the first, Democratic and Republican, well, I guess the Democrats aren't going to do it, but I guess the first Republican debate, we'll get you on after that. We'll break that down, do some things. So I think it'll be a good time.
You got it. Sounds like a plan.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your time,
so
guys.
much.
All right.
Y'all have a great night.
All right.
You too.
All right.
Dude,
we lost AJ. Where did AJ go?
His internet crapped out on us.
Yeah. Okay.
That was wonderful.
I was not prepared. I'm just going to be honest. I was not prepared for the conversations that we just had.
No, I as you noticed, I was silent because it was like
I'm never going to be silent.
It was everything he said. I could just sit there and listen to him. And man, we've had so many for the dumb little podcast that we are that has been on here for 7 episodes. We have had some amazing guests.
Yeah.
I'm a little speechless with what just happened for the last hour and a half.
That guy's bright. I mean, he is done some things, and you can tell that, even when he was talking about, even and we could go on about this forever, but even in, ultra evangelical circles, you still have these little pockets of influence and pockets of money and, people that, make decisions and do this. I mean, he, like you said, he grew up in that. He's been around it, his whole life. So
I really, I hope we get him back on, and I hope that whatever decision he makes as a family, that he decides to run for some sort of office, whether it's, in his state or
get on a school board,
national,
man. I mean, he needs
to be there. That is the kind of thought process I think this country needs right now. And
Absolutely.
it was who thought that this would be a political show. I'm not very political. I'm nowhere near what you and AJ are. I'm just kind of in the middle of everything, you know. But this was a lot of fun. This is a lot of fun. I can sit back and listen. All right. So
free Joe Exotic. Get him out of prison, man. I mean, I don't think it's a very strong conviction. I mean, I think they needed a fall guy, and it was him. And you know, I mean, get him out of prison. I mean, the guy doesn't deserve to be doing 20-something years. I mean, get him out. Let's go.
And how does Joe Exotic? I thought you were joking when you said solitary confinement. I did not
No,
know
he's
he
in,
actually is in.
No, got put in there Saturday, I believe. I think this is his third day.
That's absolutely ridiculous. So 2 weeks. Are we going to do every 2 weeks now?
Yeah, so we'll do 2 weeks until football starts. So 2 Mondays from tonight, we'll be back. And the plan is to start breaking down. And I know there's a ton of shows out there that do this, but we're going to do break down the divisions, AFC East, West, North, South, NFC in the same categories. What we love and what we hate about each team. Pick some conference winners. Kind of map out some different things as far as the divisions go. And then, you know, I mean, I think I saw we're 71, 3, 5, something like that days away from college football. So we'll do that, you know, for a bit, and they'll take us up into mini camps and training camps, and
lots of content coming. This is our dead period right now.
Coming,
lots of content's coming soon. We've got some hopeful things in the works to be able to have where we're going to be podcasting from somewhere. That ought to be pretty cool. We're working on getting the Star, so we'll be down at Dallas Cowboys at the Star. I think that'll be neat if we can make that work. So anyway,
a lot of good stuff coming for sure.
A lot of good stuff coming.
We're probably going to get some t-shirts and stuff rolled out, you know, for all of our 12 subscribers or whatever. If you're listening, you got to you got to subscribe. I hate that because every time my kids turn on a YouTube video, it's, please like and subscribe. And it just drives me insane. But that's what we need. I mean, that's what we need from the guys that are listening. So
it really is a big deal. I know that sounds dumb, like, subscribe, whatever. YouTube has certain algorithms. It helps us out if people like and subscribe and talk in the comments. I mean, it helps promote our stuff, helps it to make it where we can put more out. So yeah, help us out any way you can. Show your friends, even if your mom doesn't watch YouTube, just go to her phone, click on it, click subscribe. Do your dad. My mom and dad are both subscribed. They have no idea what YouTube is. So anyway, Benny, any final thoughts?
No, man, looking forward to a couple of weeks breaking down some of that stuff. And like I said, mini camps are kind of starting up, and some of the rookies are already in camp. I mean, it's going to be here quick, so we're excited.
Awesome. Follow Ben at Benjamin Lewis 10 on Twitter. I'm Chad H610. What is AJ? I don't know what he is.
He does. He's using Booze and Balls. Yeah. At Booze and Balls.
Booze and Balls. At Booze and Balls on Twitter. All right. Later, man.
All right. See you, Chatty.